Hi, and welcome to part 3 of my Enterprise refit build. In this video, we're going to have a look at the bridge dome and B-deck, which is located immediately underneath. And if you've watched my previous videos, you'll see that I've actually got quite a lot done in the past week. So let's go and have a look. If we start off by just having a look at the outside of the bridge has 3 large floodlights which illuminate the hull. So where it says USS Enterprise in big letters, these are the lights that light all that up. And on the studio model, there are these grill-like components either side of the lights. And I'm going to use those very much like heat sinks. So the lights themselves and the components that deal with the power and everything, the heat that generates is going to be vented out through those grills. Notice I'm using a different locomotion method in this video. I much prefer the arm swinging method over teleportation, at least when you're walking around corridors and things. It just feels more natural, and it doesn't give you motion sickness at all. At least I don't find that it does. Using first-person controls where you're just sliding around can make you feel quite sick, but this kind of tricks the brain into thinking you're actually walking. Okay, so the bridge itself is housed within this protective shell, and there isn't a lot of room for support structure underneath that shell. So I like to think the shell itself is a support structure in its own right, made of some incredibly hard material which can take torpedo impacts and the like. If we hop up here, walk up this slope. So on the rear of the bridge, you have these circular protrusions, and they are supposed to be the caps of the turbolift. But because of the size of the bridge itself inside the dome, and the turbolifts, which are kind of about here, there's no way that those line up at any scale, really. So they're going to have to be something else. I'll have a think about what they could possibly be. That is going to be a light when it's finished. So if we hop down here, so this is the rear of the teardrop shaped structure, and those are the windows to the officers' lounge down there. And behind me, this is the airlock. So this is the airlock that Spock arrives at in Star Trek The Motion Picture. So the shuttle docks here, and if we hop inside, this floor needs to be raised up to meet the level of the airlock. And there'll be steps going down there towards the turbolift. And on this side, there's going to be a small bathroom with a toilet and sink and just somewhere to freshen up. So you've got passengers coming off of their shuttle. They can hop into the toilet. There'll be a cabinet here of some description with space suits and things like that in it. And over here, this is the turbo shaft that comes up from the deck below. And the way this works is that you enter the lift here. This is just a hole that I've carved. There is not actually a proper doorway yet. But you hop onto the turbo lift, it spins round, and you exit out onto the bridge. It's a bit of a weird design, but that's the only way it could feasibly work. So we hop across. So this is the main bridge. It's 37 feet in diameter, which I believe is pretty much exactly what the set scale was. I've still got a lot of work to do, but you get a rough idea of what it's going to look like. You've got the captain's chair here, helm and navigation, main view screen up front, and the other stations just dotted around the perimeter, and obviously the 2 turbo lift doors. And before we go down to B deck, we just hop out back over there, around this corner. I'm going to have some kind of room back here, so I'm not quite sure what it's going to be used for yet. And we have our first almost complete Jeffries tube. So if I get down on my hands and knees, and the cool thing about using this arm swinging locomotion as it actually works when you're crawling as well. So I can get a bit lower, hop down, and crawl around. And you'll see here that you've got the data and power cables coming in from the main computer, which, if you look, is down there. So you'll have the rear of the bridge equipment connected up to the EPS tap here, which I'm going to style better than that. It's just a cube at the moment. And you'll find that each of the various segments of the bridge will have one of those connected to it, and in turn connected to the computer itself. I'll keep going around here. I really feel for Scotty working in these all day long. It's quite a cramped space, although I'm on my hands and knees, and it's not too bad. I mean, I'm not banging my head or anything. Almost there. Go a bit quicker. Okay. You can see the bits of unfinished deck down below. Right, hop up there. Hard work, that. Okay, back to the turbo lift. Okay, if we hop down to the deck below. So this is the turbo shaft so far. I've been trying different versions of this, and so far this is the one I like the best. These black lines are going to be the gravity assist rails, which help propel the turbo cars around. And if we walk over here, you can look down all the way down to deck 9 or so down below. And we exit the turbo lift here into our first corridor. It's not complete yet. I still need to include the air duct that goes along the ceiling there. And it needs various signs and control panels and things. This door here goes to the officers' lounge, which we'll get to later. And you'll see that it's got the red alert indicators along the outside there as well. And I do intend for them to be controllable from the bridge at some point. So red alert will sound and all those will light up. And as we go over here into this noisy room, this is the main computer, which is a column that goes all the way down through the center of the saucer. So there'll be one of these on every deck. And here you can see the yellow data cables as they're coming in from the Jefferies tube that we were in just now. Obviously they all plug into the main computer. The blue EPS conduit, I haven't quite worked out where to route those yet, so they're just dangling there. I didn't like the idea of routing them too close to the computer because they can be quite explosive. And from a design standpoint, it just doesn't seem to make sense that you'd have something that explosive next to something that delicate. So I'll see where I can put those. And I've taken the look and feel of this room from the engineering sets, both the one you see on the Enterprise and also the one you see briefly on the Excelsior. So you've got these silvery panels with a black background. And I think I'll use that for any part of the ship which is related to either engineering or something like this with computers. Just generally the physical workings of the ship, just to keep that design consistent throughout. So if we walk around here, so this is the same corridor we were just in, we're just on the other side. So that's the other side of the turbo lift, that's the other door to the officers' lounge. And over here we have the conference room. So this is the first room that I've made an effort to decorate, just so you can get an idea of the kind of thing that will be in here. And completely as a fluke, just the general design and shape of this room is very reminiscent of the briefing room on the TOS Enterprise, with this curved ceiling and these beams. And I didn't design it that way. It's literally the case that the outer hull of the ship and the support structure that holds it all together just happens to be this shape. So that's a happy little coincidence. And if I just stick my head through the wall over here, you can see the actual girders themselves. This is the outer hull right here. And then the beams on the inside are quite literally just covering up the girder structure. And the same is true for this panel over here as well. So behind here, there's a girder which connects to the floor above, and this is just a cover that covers it up to make it look nicer. So with this being VR, everything is of course interactive, so you can pick things up and manipulate them. It's one of my favorite books, so I had to include it. And you can pull out the chairs, move them around, grab one of these charming Starfleet mugs, and then just chuck it at another one like that. And that's the beauty of the VR environment. Because you can just literally pick things up, move them around, it makes the whole environment just that much more interactive and that much more real, which is absolutely brilliant. And I'm hoping to fill every single room with just loads of stuff that you can just pick up, chuck about, mess around with. And it should make the whole thing an extremely interactive experience. Boop. Okay, moving on. Over here, and this room here was going to be the captain's ready room, but it's a little on the large side. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it into two separate rooms and just have them as generic offices. These beams here are designed such that you can actually put a wall in if you need one, and then just take it away if you want a larger room. And this is true all the way around the outside of the teardrop-shaped structure. So you could have multiple rooms here, or one really huge one, depending on the need of the ship. And whether or not Kirk had a ready room, like all the other captains that we see on screen, is an interesting debate, because while he's never seen to be using a ready room, I think there is a precedent set with all the other versions of the Enterprise that do have ready rooms, that there would at least be one, regardless of whether or not he chooses to use it. Because in all the scenes where he would be doing something that would normally take place in a ready room, he chooses to go and do it in his quarters. So I just assume that Kirk prefers the more relaxed environment of his quarters over a formal office space like this. So I'll have a generic CO office, and then perhaps an admin office as well. But we'll see when I come to get those rooms decorated. So we carry on down the corridor, past the computer room, and out into the officers' mess area, officers' lounge. This is quite a big space, which takes up pretty much the entire rear end of the teardrop shape. And I've tried to include all of the external windows in the lounge area. So there'll be seating pretty much from here all the way around. And also, somewhere, I think I'm going to include a small galley as well, so crew can create their own food if they want to, rather than using the food replicator. And as we come towards the windows here, this is a part of the ship which is reasonably well documented. If I hop over there. So this is the main lounge windows, looking out towards the rear of the ship. And in various different sketches and diagrams, and indeed for a few seconds on screen, we see sofas here, a little table, and actually in some cases waterfalls and some foliage either side. And the idea of this lounge, with the shape of the outer hull, is that there are steps going down, and then the sofa's in front of the windows. I've tried to fit that design in as much as I can, but I think I'm going to be stuck for space because of the slope of the hull and the height of the windows. There isn't really enough room to get a flat area where I can put sofas. This hull is slightly higher than it needs to be, so I can lower this section slightly, but I still don't think I'm going to have the room I need to be able to fit that in properly. So it's going to have to be a close approximation of the original design. And over here, this is the lounge area that we see on screen. So there's a wall along here, various sofas and things. There's a partition sort of halfway between here and the rear windows. And there are various arguments as to whether or not they're windows or high-resolution TV screens. I think because of constraints with filming, the original idea was to be able to have the windows looking out across at the nacelles, but instead you just see square windows in the starfield. I've seen various solutions at achieving the original design intent, but I think the one I prefer is, rather than having TV screens on the walls, to just have them as perhaps maybe a window or just an open space. So the lounge area here still looks out over the main lounge and the back windows towards the rear of the ship. So that's it so far for new stuff. But if I hop down here back towards the rec deck, go through this wall. Since my last video, the rec deck looks a little bit bigger than it did before. And the reason for that is, although the physical dimensions themselves are the same, the VR persona is 10% smaller. And that's because the Unreal Engine VR scale isn't quite right. It's certainly not true to life. And I discovered this and tested this by using a replica of a coffee table that I have in real life. So the coffee table is exactly a meter long. And placing my hands physically on it with the VR controllers, the one in the game was quite a bit smaller. And as soon as I changed the VR scale by 10%, all of a sudden everything matched nicely. So as a result, the Enterprise itself is now, compared to you, 10% larger, which means that the windows actually work better than they did before. So you've got a good view out there of the nacelles, and the rear windows as well are in a slightly better position, and indeed the balcony works better than it did before. And you might notice that I broke the TV. Not quite sure how I broke the TV, but I'll have to go back and try and fix that. I think I messed up the UV unwrapping, but I'll fix that for the next release. And while we're talking about scale, if I just hop over to one of these other rooms around the edge, but if I go and hop up onto this beam here, and I think I've come up with a solution for the windows being slightly too low on the hull there. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do away with the concept of having two separate decks entirely in this section, and I'll have an arrangement which is more like what we see on the rec deck over there. So the rec deck has a balcony, and that balcony is lower than the deck height normally would be. And I'll take a similar approach here. So rather than the balcony, I'll have something more like a mezzanine. So there'll be a mezz area with some tables and chairs, and because it's slightly lower, the windows will be actually in the perfect place. And again, down below we'll have some lounge areas and maybe a kitchen, perhaps duplicated all the way around, and the other lounges as well. And one last thing I'd just like to demonstrate. If we go over here, just hop down these girders a little bit, all the way to the bottom. This is one of my favourite views so far. You can see the turbo shaft coming down there through the decks. And because I made a bit of a mistake with the floor, it's just a single-sided texture, so you can actually see through it. You can see all the decks above. And in VR, it looks really, really impressive. I'm sure it probably doesn't translate very well onto a 2D screen. So as such, I've actually included a link to my test build in the video description. So if you've got an HTC Vive or an Oculus Rift, I'd encourage you to download it and give it a try. And Oculus Rift users specifically, I haven't actually got a Rift myself, so I don't even know whether it works on the Rift. So if you could try it and let me know, that would be great. Okay, so as always, thanks for watching. Please hit like and please subscribe if you want to see some future updates. I'm planning on making, hopefully, one video a week to cover my progress, so there should be regular updates coming in. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the flip side. And this is one of my favourite books, so I had to include it. Oh. And hey, it's good for stress relief as well. You can just chuck stuff around. Wow, that got stuck in the ceiling.